What's up, guys? Today we're going to be talking about cha-ching! That's right, baby. The Swords Trilogy by Michael Moorcock. So, guys, I read this trilogy in the very beginning of the year. And ever since, I've been struggling on how I'm going to kind of relay my thoughts and feelings about these books to you. Mostly because I really fucking enjoyed them, and I wasn't sure if a spoiler-free review or just a straight-up why you should read would be the best, avenue to take. But here I am, kind of exhausted of trying to pick between which content to provide. So here we go. A spoiler-free review of the 3 books that make up the Swords Trilogy. That is Knight of Swords, Queen of Swords, and King of Swords, of course. Now, these books are part of Michael Moorcock's kind of multiverse of fantasy. And what I mean by that is our main character, Coram Jalen Ersi, is what is known as an eternal champion. At least he is part of this eternal champion, much like Elric, Erikesi, Hawkmoon. These are all characters in their own worlds that are all a part of this eternal champion concept that Moorcock has cooked up. And it is really fucking cool. It's one of the things that makes this guy such an awesome author. And just, ooh, we're going to get into it. All right, so we're going to start our journey with Knight of Swords, where Michael Moorcock hits us with a prologue. Now, this prologue is at the beginning of each one of these stories, and it's the same prologue, but what it does is it really enlightens the reader to this specific stretch of multiverse that Michael Moorcock has created, okay? Because they're all connected and cross over, but they all are very individually their own as well. And here in these books, we're learning that there were 2 ancient races, the Vada and the Nadra. Now, these races ruled the realms, and to some extent travel, control, and can see through them. Now, this is kind of a disturbing concept to a new and upstart race known as man, or the Mabden, is what the ancient races call them. Now, men see the ancient races as somewhat strange and wicked. Their science is more like sorcery, and so they kind of look at these ancient races like a problem. Where the ancient races look at this young upstart group of individuals as nothing really to worry about. They're just, they're just men doing foolish men things. And we will learn very quickly that this is a massive mistake made on behalf of the ancient races. As the reader, we will follow our main character, Coram Jalen Ersi, also known as the Prince in the Scarlet Robe, which is pretty goddamn badass. But we will follow Coram as he makes his way through this new world of man. And like I said, the decisions made right there in the prologue really hit heavy right out the gate, and I don't want to get into too much stuff. And I know you're going, Mark, you said you were going to review the trilogy. Well, I will, but I'm not really going to talk too much about what happens in the narrative, okay? I'm going to try to wow you with everything else. This is probably not going to happen, but let's try. All right, so some of the things I want to get into right out the gate are going to be some of the more obvious things about the books. So right out the gate, the books are old. They've been written a long time ago, and I know a lot of times people are like, oh, that's not an excuse because Tolkien is classic, he's timeless. But okay, fair enough. And there may be Moorcock's books here are not as timeless as something that Tolkien has done. And it's certainly for, specific reasons I can try to break down throughout here. But that all aside, guys, if you're trying to put a modern eye, onto an older story and just start scrutinizing it, you're gonna find cracks everywhere you look, okay? It's just, that's the way. Things were different then. They were written differently than they were, than they are today. There are tropes that were like, oh, we're so tired of hearing these, reading about these tropes. And then you might criticize this book for being tropish when realistically it's the fucking book that created the trope, okay? So I feel like sometimes you gotta grant a little grace when it comes to older stories. There's just, things will always be changing for us, as readers, people that consume the product, okay? Once the story's been written, it can't fucking change at all. So it's not the story's fault that you went and changed, all right? You guys are like, wow, man, you're really going to bat for these dated books. Well, you know, here's the thing, guys. I had an immense amount of pleasure while reading these fucking stories, and I think it's something that might get lost on people. You know, the people might have the potential of having a great time with these stories, but they don't even give them a shot because maybe they heard, oh, you know, I liked these books when I was younger, but then I got older and reread them, and they're, you know, I found them dated, or there's just to be filled with a lot of trouble. You know, here's the thing. Not everything has to be bulletproof and stand the test of time. Some things can be almost like a fucking snapshot in fantasy, because when you fucking read it, you're like, damn, this hits all the nostalgic bells, you know? I'm just ringing with pleasure here, all right? Do you hear me? Ringing with pleasure. One of the things that makes these stories very different from what you're kind of consuming, you know, today is just really like the length, their pace and their length. These are pulpy fantasy reads, guys. They're like really quick and over with. They take you on a journey from point A to point B rather quickly, and when you have a pace like this, you sacrifice depth. There's no way to bring this massive, rich world, something that feels like it's been, you know, fleshed out for 20 years, when you have a pace like this. And that is something I feel like a lot of modern readers are going to feel. It might feel jarring almost, how we're just, you know, popping from plot point to plot point. There, you know, as much imagination as Moorcock puts into these stories, and there is depth in that imagination, there is a certain, you know, certain aspect of the depth in the story that is being sacrificed so that we can go on this speedy journey. And like I said, that will grain on some people, but there are others like myself who do not mind dipping into short style, you know, like short fantasy, like a good little journey that I can fucking read in a day or two and just be done. And now I just mentioned imagination, and that is something that you will find in all of Michael Moorcock's works, but especially here in the Swords Trilogy. This whole world and all the adventures that we will follow Corum on are just, man, it's the stuff. It's that thing. It's the juice, baby. It's what made me love fantasy in the fucking first place, okay? It is fantastical in all the right ways. And one of the things that Michael Moorcock, personally, I think that he does and just knocks it out of the park. One of the things that he uses his imagination to do that really plays through in just fucking flying colors is his magical items and his magical weapons. Now, a lot of us know about Elric and Stormbringer, but I have to admit, like the magical weapons and items, or I should say the magical items displayed here in the Corum books are just as brilliant, just as imaginative, and just as fucking awesome, okay? Here in these stories, we will see the hand of Quill and the eye of Rin. Now, these are magical items that will be bestowed upon Corum along his journey. And now, you know, a hand and an eye don't sound as cool as a fucking sword. But I'm telling you, they're badass. And there are things that Michael Moorcock does with these magical weapons, magical items, that make them very intriguing, compelling. They're not just flashy and cool. There are things that happen that make you think, make you ask questions. Another aspect of these stories that I just really cherished by the end was the main character, Corum. Now, and this is very funny because essentially between Elric and Corum, I mean, on paper, it's kind of a no-brainer. I should be the guy, I'm the shoo-in for Elric. I like the anti-hero kind of style character. But Corum is like almost the archetype. He's like the poster child for the kind of character that normally is a turnoff for me. Yet here he is in all his glory, forever capturing my attention. I love this character. And yes, he does fight for like on the side of good. He champions law. Where Elric is bound in chaos, Corum is definitely fighting on the side of good, okay? There's really no like gray area there. Though there are things that happen along the way that, like I said, will cause questions to pop up in your head, even when dealing with morality. But I would say, one way or the other, Corum's morality never really truly steps out of bounds. It is always, he is a good person. When it all boils down to it, Corum is a good person, and he is a part of this ancient race that, yes, maybe did grow complacent and foolish, and maybe just, you know, in their own hubris, became something that less than what they truly are. But Corum is a decent being, and he is fun to follow. He is fun to root for, and the things that happen throughout his little journeys here are tragic. And you give a fuck about it, okay? That's what's important. Because you like this character, when good things or bad things happen, you're excited. You're on the edge of your seat. You're worried. You're whatever. You're invested because the character is just well written. And I have to say, at least he is well written for somebody like me who normally can't stand this type of character. Like I said, I just couldn't get enough of the Prince in the Scarlet Robe. One thing that really pleasantly surprised me in these books was the action and the violence. Now, like I said before, if I was going through Michael Moorcock's catalog and I wanted to find the more violent and like action-packed stories, I would think to go to Elric. Now, I have to admit, at this point, I've read more Corum than I've read Elric. So that could change, but from my experience so far, I felt like I had found the action and the violence that I was searching for in Elric here in Corum. In fact, like I said, it surprised me, especially when dealing with a fucking, like, a champion of law, a good guy. But that doesn't mean that bad shit ain't gonna come his way, and Corum certainly knows how to deal with it. Slash. I'm serious. Some of this stuff, this writing, is so just hard-hitting. It really packs a punch, and it's surprising, and it's such a welcome addition to the story. Because as you're going along, when this shit pops off, it gets bloody and violent, even to today's standards. In fact, I would say that this is part of the thing that, like, not only did it surprise me, it was so pleasant to be reading it, because I was like, shit, not even a motherfucker today trying to whip this stuff up is doing this good of a job. It's just that entertaining, that visceral, and just smacking you in the fucking face. It feels real. Really fucking cool. And I know that earlier I mentioned the whole, like, sacrificing depth for speed thing, you know? But that doesn't mean that Michael Moorcock skimped on any epic moments. Because, guys, there are epic moments galore throughout these 3 books. Some moments that are permanently burned into my fantasy brain, and I am so glad to have them there, just lasered into my fucking gray noodle. Especially one instance where we will see Corum face a god of chaos, one that we are familiar with if we read Elric's books, but we will come to find that we will see him in a whole different light here in Corum's world. Because though it is the same god, they will take different shapes in different parts of the multiverse. And when we lay eyes on Arioch and his massive, hideous form with human beings hanging from it like lice, well, it's the stuff that nightmares are made of. And that's the kind of stuff that I love. So as far as my 2 cents for the slow and the struggling, yes, absolutely these books could be for you. In fact, I think that they could be for all readers. Whether you're old or new, experienced, slow, fast, it doesn't fucking matter, guys. There is something here for everybody. Now, obviously, for the slow and the struggling, you have somewhat of a challenge with Moorcock's writing and his prose, okay? Sometimes things are going to be delivered like long in the tooth, or just like flowery descriptions, which can cause challenges for struggling readers. But he's also created stories that are short, they're fast-paced. These are pulpy reads, guys, so he has paved the way. Has he put a couple hurdles in there for you? Yeah, but they're very small, and he's made everything else super smooth. And to the rest of you, just know you could be like me, where You live in a world today where the fantastical has been ground down to fucking dust and then blown out into the wind and gotten it as far away from you as possible. And this was only to make way for gritty realism set in low fantasy worlds that feel authentic, genuine, rich, and raw. Okay, look, I'm telling you right now, if you just take a step back, let your hands off the steering wheel, and let some of these older stories take you for a drive down Imagination Avenue, well, you might just be as surprised as I am when finishing these books and just going, holy fuck, man. I forgot what fantasy was like, what it could be if we just imagined. Well, as always, guys, thanks for spending some time down here at the channel. It's a Michael Moorcock. You guys can't tell, but this is the Matrix thumbs up, where there's just dozens of them. That looks like two going like this, but really it's dozens. And they're traveling throughout the multiverse, and they're all on their way to you, Mr. Moorcock, because you're a bad mother. Shut your mouth. To the rest of you, man, what are you scumbags doing? I thought I told you to get out of here, you riffraff. I'm just joking. You know I need you. So feel free to smoke your cigarettes in the corner or read your satanic novels or whatever you crazy kids do. Just please stay. Please stay. Please.